Being able to drive a manual is an important skill for everyone. It makes driving the car a lot more exciting. And it opens up a world of new possibilities of vehicles that you can and should drive with your new talent. And if you're a female watching this video, being able to drive a manual is sexy. The best way to learn how to drive a manual car is to actually own one. If you can only borrow a friend's car once every 2 months or so for an hour, it's going to be a long and difficult process. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. When I bought this car, which was the first manual car that I ever owned, I bought it with about 10 hours of manual driving experience. So both the test drive and the ride home were very interesting experiences. But within a week, I was comfortable, loving life, and it almost felt like second nature. Learn how to drive a manual in well-fitting normal shoes. Doing this in clunky boots, flip-flops, or high heels will make this a lot harder than it already is. The best place to learn how to drive a manual is in a big empty parking lot. Some place where you can reach about 20 miles an hour so you can shift maybe into second or third gear safely with no one around to run into. The first thing you want to do is familiarize yourself with the vehicle. Chances are if you can't drive a manual, this is your first time behind the driver's seat of this car. You'll immediately notice that there are 3 pedals. The gas and the brake are in the normal places, but the third pedal on the left is known as the clutch. Begin by practicing pushing the clutch all the way down and shifting through the gears with the shift lever. You have to press the clutch in order to change gears. As you release the clutch, do it slowly at first. Feel for when it pushes harder against your leg. This is called the bite point. This will be very important for later. Depending upon your clutch's age, it can be anywhere from near the bottom to the very top of the clutch throw. Going from a standstill to a start is the hardest part, so that's what you'll be practicing the most. In order to demonstrate the process of learning how to drive a manual, I'm going to have Eddie hop in the driver's seat and we'll teach him step by step how to successfully do it. Alright, so to start the car, make sure your handbrake's on, you've got your brake pedal depressed, and you got to push the clutch all the way in order to start the car, and then either turn the key or push the ignition. In order to put the car into first gear, or any gear for that matter, you have to press the clutch in all the way. So go ahead and push the clutch in all the way, and then put it into first gear, which is up and to the left. Okay. In order to start the car successfully without stalling, you have to slowly release the clutch pedal and give it gas at the same time. Now at this point, if you were to release the clutch, which don't do, the car would stall. So in order to get moving without stalling, you have to release the clutch until you feel what's called the biting point, which it gets a little stiffer, and if you're feeling a clutch pedal right now, you would know. And once you get there, you can practice getting there quickly. Then after that, you're going to want to slowly release it as you're giving the car gas. And a lot of people, when they're starting to drive a manual and they stall the car, the instructor tells them, oh, you're pulling the clutch pedal up too fast. But really the most important thing is the second half. Generally people will go, I'm doing it slowly, but it's the top 4 inches that they're forgetting is even there, and that's what's stalling the car. So try releasing the handbrake and release the clutch until you feel the biting point, and then give it some gas, and then you're off. So it's kind of a two-way smooth motion where you're releasing the clutch pedal as you're giving it gas. Like I said, the biggest tip for that is to make sure the second half is the slowest part, because often people will say, oh, I'm doing it slowly, but they're actually forgetting about the most important, crucial last little bit, and that's why it's stalling. Okay. There's no set RPM that you can rev it to or amount of seconds to release the clutch. It's really a feel thing, and a lot of cars are different. But in general, the slower you do it and the more gas you give it, the higher chance it's going to work. Might go through the clutch faster. Another problem is when people are giving it gas, they tend to rev it in the beginning, and actually for the second half, which is the most crucial part, the revs are starting to die down, and then the car stalls. So if you're going to focus on a time to give it gas, either if you can hold it perfectly constant, which is hard to do, give it some gas during the second half of the release. So it may take you a million times to get rolling. It took me personally more times than I'd like to admit, but you will get the hang of it, and it really is just a feel thing. Practice makes perfect. So once you're moving, the hardest part is now done. I'd suggest rolling around in the parking lot in first gear, getting comfortable with the car while you're moving. And after that, to get into second gear, you just press the clutch in and then pull it back into second. And as you are shifting gears, you do the exact same thing again. You release the clutch slowly and give it some gas. You know, my biggest problem was actually too much gas and releasing the clutch too quickly while I was already moving, which kind of would jerk you forward. You wouldn't stall, but it wouldn't be a pleasant thing. So too much gas can sometimes be a problem. But honestly, once you're rolling, things like being on the freeway is your friend, and being in San Francisco on a hill with a Ferrari behind you is not, because that's a stressful situation. There's no set RPM at which to shift at. You know, if I'm driving and trying to save the environment, I might shift at around 2,000. If I'm trying to impress the girl in the passenger seat or scare the crap out of my friends, I might shift at 7,200. But every car is different. It's really, once again, a feel thing, and you'll get used to it within, honestly, a week of driving if you're driving the car all the time. Eventually, you will have to come to a stop and slow down. There are two schools of thought for this. One is called downshifting. So if I'm in third gear, which I am right now, and I'm approaching a stop sign, I will put my foot on the brake, shift into second gear, coast, and then maybe I'll shift into first gear. It can be a little jerky, and then push the clutch in all the way, and then put my foot on the brake. You have to put your foot all the way on the clutch, otherwise the car will stall if you come to a stop. Eddie has another school of thought. What's that?
The other thing is, if you're not very smooth at downshifting, what you can do is put the car into neutral, take your foot off the clutch, and just use the brakes. Because it's a lot cheaper to replace brake pads than it is to rehaul your transmission and your clutch. And if you aren't great at slowing down by downshifting, you can put a lot of wear and tear onto those components.
It is true. In order to downshift smoothly, you have to do something called rev matching. That's a more advanced technique, and we'll get to that in another video. But just for your general awareness, there are two different ways of doing it. But I bet Michael Schumacher downshifts when he comes to a stop.
Definitely.
When you are parking in a manual, notice there is no park gear like there is on an automatic. So it's important to pull the e-brake, turn the engine off, and then put your car in either first gear or reverse for extra safety if you're on a hill or something like that. You know, if you're facing downwards on a downhill, it's best to put it in reverse because it's going to lock the car from rolling forwards. If you're on an uphill, put it in first. Just gives you a little bit of extra comfort. So this video is just the basics on how to drive a manual. There's many more advanced techniques that we won't cover in this video, but we will in future videos. You know, learning how to drive manual is a fantastic skill, but it is extremely frustrating. So swearing and stalling a bunch is totally normal and fine. But just try to have as much fun with it as possible, because once you do learn how to do it, it's awesome. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like always, please browse our channel and subscribe. And if you have any more things related to cars that you'd like to see us do a technical review and or instructional video on, please leave a comment below and we'll get on that as soon as possible.